Most parents don't need another list of things to say. They need something that helps them slow down enough to actually hear each other. And that's what the books I'm sharing today do. They don't give you clever scripts. They help you create the emotional space where communication can happen. Hi, I'm Catherine O'Brien. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in Sacramento, California, and I spent over 20 years working with parents and couples in the hardest season of their relationships. After babies, during burnout, when things start to feel distant or fragile. I've also written my own book, Happy with Baby, Essential Relationship Advice When Partners Become Parents, because I kept seeing how different relationships become when people are exhausted, overstimulated, and carrying a lot emotionally. And what I learned is simple, is that communication improves when people feel safe enough to be honest. And when I say safe, I don't mean we don't fight. I mean, I can tell you the truth about how I feel without worrying that I'll be punished for it. And in long-term relationships, especially after kids, people stop being honest, not because they don't care, but because it feels emotionally risky. They don't say, I feel lonely. They say, you're always on your phone. They don't say, I miss you. They say, you never help me. And they don't say, I'm overwhelmed. They say, you don't do anything around here. And honesty disappears when it doesn't feel safe to be vulnerable. So communication problems are rarely about skill, they're about protection. And the moment a couple feels safer emotionally, something will shift. Their tone softens, they explain instead of attack, and they listen instead of defend. And that's why the books I'm recommending aren't just about what to say, they're about how to create the emotional safety that makes real conversation possible. Most couples don't struggle because they don't know how to talk. They struggle because something inside of them feels unsafe. And when someone feels misunderstood, they start explaining louder instead of listening. And when someone feels unseen, they start protesting instead of connecting. And when someone doesn't feel emotionally safe, they stop sharing the parts of themselves that actually really matter in the relationship. And at that point, communication just stops being about understanding and becomes about self-protection. So that's why techniques like using I statements or taking turns can often fall flat. Those tools assume both people already feel safe. But if one partner is thinking, I'm not heard here, or I get in trouble when I'm honest, their nervous system is already on guard. And when your nervous system is in protection mode, it doesn't care about communication skills, it cares about survival. And this is where maybe the right book matters. Some books leave people feeling blamed, they're the problem. Others help people feel understood, like their reactions make sense in contact. And when someone feels understood, their body can relax. They soften, they become more open, and they shift from defended to open. And what actually changes how couples talk, and that is what actually changes how couples talk to each other. I worked with this couple who had described themselves as good communicators, and they didn't yell and they didn't insult each other. They were very polite and practical, but they also felt lonely. And they told me, we talk about schedules, kids, and logistics, but we never talk about it. So what finally helped wasn't one more technique. It was reading something that gave them language for longing, for fear, and that quiet grief of feeling disconnected. So once they could name what was happening emotionally, their conversations changed. And that's why the books I'm recommending are not just about communication, they're about emotional connection. So when I recommend books to couples, I'm not looking for the ones with the cleverest scripts or the most tips. I'm looking for the ones that help people feel less alone inside what they're experiencing. The books that soften the defenses, the ones that give language to feelings people haven't been able to name, and the ones that help partners see each other with more compassion instead of more blame. So let me share the ones that I trust most, the ones I share the most, the ones I've watched help real couples reconnect again and again. The first one is The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work by John and Julie Gottmans. This is foundational. What makes the Gottmans different is that they didn't just sit in offices and theorize about relationships. They studied real couples in real time for decades, and they brought couples into what they called the love lab and observed how they talked, how they fought, how they repaired, and even how their bodies responded. Their heart rate, stress hormones, emotional flooding. And from that research, they discovered something incredibly important. It's not the absence of conflict that predicts whether a relationship will last. It's whether couples know how to come back together after the disconnection. That's where concepts like repair attempts and emotional bids come from. A repair might be something small, a joke, a soft tone, a gentle touch, and a can we start over? And a bid might be even smaller, a comment, a look, an invitation to connect. And what the Gottmans showed is that relationships are not built in big moments, but need tiny everyday reaches for connection. And for parents, this is everything, because when you're raising kids, you are constantly interrupted, tired, and pulled in different directions. And you're not going to have perfect conversations. But if you know how to notice and respond to others' bids and how to repair when you do miss them, your relationship stays emotionally alive. And that's why this book is so powerful for parents. It teaches you how to keep choosing each other in small, real ways, even when life is overwhelming. And the second one is also by John and Julie Gottman. It's called The Fight Right. I recommend to couples. They tell me, hey, we keep having the same fight over and over again. And what Fight Right does well is it helps couples understand that most fights aren't really about the topic. They're about what that topic touches emotionally. One of the Gottman's biggest discoveries is that when people get emotionally flooded, when their heart rate spikes and their nervous system goes into threat, they literally can't listen. So what this book teaches is not how to avoid conflict, but how to stay regulated enough inside conflict to not do damage. So for parents, this is huge because kids bring sleep deprivation, stress, and endless decision making, which means there's more room for emotional flooding. And this book really helps couples slow fights down, recognize where they're overwhelmed, and protects the relationship while they're disagreeing. It's not about being polite. It's about staying emotionally safe while you're upset. And number 3 is called Us by Terry Real. Terry Real is a couples therapist who's worked with thousands of couples around resentment, power, and emotional responsibility. He's especially good at helping couples see when they've slipped into a dynamic where one person feels like they're caring more and the other feels criticized or shut out. So this book really helps couples stop asking who's right and start asking, how are we doing this together? And so I recommend this when partners feel stuck, polarized, or resentful, because it really brings couples back into their partnership. And the fourth one, again, is by Terry Real. It's called The New Rules of Marriage. It's a powerful book for couples who feel trapped in these rigid roles. He helps partners see how overfunctioning, withdrawing, and controlling behaviors develop when people don't feel emotionally safe. And it teaches couples how to relate as two adults, not as a manager and a child or a pursuer and a distancer. It's about becoming equals again. And the fifth one is Mating in Captivity by Esther Perel. She's a psychotherapist who I adore, and she specializes in intimacy, desire, and long-term relationships. She really understands something many parents feel but don't know how to say, that you can love someone deeply and still feel far from them. And this book helps couples understand why desire and connection change after kids and how to bring that curiosity and vitality back into your relationship. So I recommend this when couples say, we love each other, but we don't feel close. And the sixth one, again by Esther Perel, is called The State of Affairs. And this book is about rupture, emotional or relational, and what it reveals about a relationship. Even when there hasn't been an affair, many parents experience emotional betrayal, feeling unseen, lonely, or replaced by stress and responsibility. And this book really helps couples understand what disconnection is trying to communicate, not just what went wrong. And the seventh one is Hold Me Tight by Sue Johnson. She founded Emotionally Focused Therapy, which is one of the most researched and effective approaches for couples therapy. And her book helps couples understand patterns they get stuck in. The pursuing, the withdrawing, the shutting down, and how those are really cries for closeness. And it gives couples a way to talk about their deeper needs without blame. And the eighth one is The Power of Showing Up by Dan Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson. And this book I most often recommend for parents because it is for parents, especially around attachment and what the authors call the 4 S's, feeling safe, seen, soothed, and secure. Dan Siegel is a psychiatrist and one of the leading voices in attachment and the science of relationship. And his work helps us understand that emotional connection isn't just nice, it's what shapes how our brains develop and how we relate to the people we love. And so I usually give this book to parents to help them understand their children. But what's so powerful is that it applies just as much to adult partners And partners also want to feel safe, seen, soothed, and secure. So when couples understand this, they stop taking each other's reactions so personally and they start seeing the nervous system underneath the behavior. And that shift from blame to understanding can really change how they communicate with each other. And the ninth one is Happy with Baby by me, Catherine O'Brien. I wrote it because I saw how often parents were told what to do, but not given the compassion for how hard this season really is. So it brings together attachment, communication, emotional safety, and just the reality of raising kids while trying to stay connected. It's about helping couples feel like they're on the same team again. So you don't need to become a different person to have a better relationship. You just need language for what you're already feeling. And the right books can give you that language. So if you found these book recommendations helpful, I hope your next step is a video. It's called Taking Care of Yourself and Taking Care of Your Partner is Taking Care of Baby. In that video, I talk about how your relationship and your emotional well-being directly shape how you care for your children and why nurturing yourselves as a couple isn't selfish, it's essential. So click right there and I'll see you there.